A yes or a thumbs up would be appreciated. Okay. Bacho, I need to know that can you hear me because I had some internet issues. Come on, say yes everybody. Mic unmute करके कह दें जरा या chat box में कह दें. चले अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह. ज़ैनब को आ रही है इसका मतलब सबको आ रही है. Thank you Zainab. I appreciate. Okay, so जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम. हेलो जी वालेकुम सलाम. आ भी गए हैं इतनी जल्दी? आ गए हैं? बाहर खड़े हैं? आप बाहर खड़े हैं? ओह अच्छा. But I'm so sorry. Can you please give me 1 minute? There's an home delivery order that's waiting for me outside. Best, बिल्कुल मुझे 30 seconds दें मैं आ रहा हूँ. I apologize. Meanwhile, I'll give you this picture. This picture. I want you to look at this picture and tell me what do you think this picture is all about? Sorry. A lot of disturbance today. My bad. My apologies. जी, थोड़ा सा आपको माइक अनम्यूट करके मुझे बताना पड़ेगा. What is this picture all about, and what do you think this picture is all about? Yes. Can anybody tell me? नाम तो चलें अगर आपको नहीं पता, but still, this picture is representing a very important idea. Okay, and what exactly is that idea? I'm going to write that down, and that is the idea of what is known as species. Okay, that is something that we need to understand. We have been talking about this back in natural selection when we were doing speciation. Okay, lekin still we need to understand and define what exactly a species. So there are two aspects to the definition of species. Again, I'm going to give you points. It's easier to remember these definition in points, but of course in the exam you understand, you have to write them in sentences. So there are two aspects, Bacho, to the understanding or the definition of species. Number one is that these are a group of organisms, that's for sure, of course. A group of organisms. I think I should change the color of my ink back to green. That have similar. They have some things in similar. Now, what exactly they have? Do they have similar? They have similarities in three further things. Number one, they have morphological similarities. Morphological similarities. What do I mean when I use the word morphological? Morphological, Bacho, has to do with the structure, if you like, not the physical, the structural aspects of the structure. Okay, so let me write that down here. The structure. They have similar physiology. Okay, physiological. Agar aap yaad ho, physiological has to do with the function. Okay. And number three, they have similarities in their biochemical features. Biochemical features. What do I mean when I say biochemical features? Biochemical means their chemical reactions that are happening inside them and the molecular structural similarities and so on and so forth. Okay, so the species, they are similar in the following three things. That's how we define species. That's the first part of the definition. Yet another very important part of the definition of species is that they are capable of reproducing to produce fertile offsprings. Capable of reproducing. Kuch bache, some students, they just suffice their answers with this particular point, that is capable of reproducing, without any further clarification. Just to write that they're capable of reproducing is insufficient. You have to write that they are capable of reproducing to produce fertile offsprings. To produce fertile offsprings. Okay, now let me ask you a very important question. Um, the same species, will they be reproductively isolated? That's the question that I'm putting, and I've talked about this word in the previous topic. Will this, our species, so for example, frogs ki baat kar rahe hain. We're talking about this particular orange guy here. That's a sort of a frog. Okay. I say that this frog is reproductively isolated. Can anybody complete my sentence or add something to my sentence that would make sense of me using this word? और शर्माए मत, गलत भी हो गया तो कोई बात नहीं, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? I mean, at least you know, you've heard of this word, reproductive isolation. कोई बहादुर बच्चा? Nobody is Bahadur at the end.
Sir, the forming of zygotes.
Khatija? Reproductive isolation?
सर जो ऑफस्प्रिंग होंगे वो रिप्रोड्यूस नहीं कर सकते.
Okay, okay, देखें.
The forming of zygotes.
No, देखें, मैं बताता हूँ. देखें. Let's consider an example. A species of frogs. देखें, मुझे आप ये बताएं. Can a frog mate with a frog to produce a frog? Yes. Of course, that's possible. Okay. Is this a reproductive isolation? Is this reproductive isolation? Okay, this is not the reproductive isolation. I'm deliberately confusing you, honestly.
No, sir.
They came. A frog can reproduce with a frog, okay, but a frog cannot reproduce with, for example, a tiger, okay. I mean, they can't reproduce, okay. This phenomena is a reproductive isolation. So why have I talked about this idea when I'm discussing species? Because we need to understand that when we are talking about species are reproductively isolated from other species. That's important. From other species. Okay, this is a very easy but yet a very important point that often students, they tend to ignore, and the examiner will play with this idea. Okay, so you need to understand. So just to summarize, I will define a species as a group of organisms that have the same morphological, physiological, and biochemical features, and also they are capable of reproducing to produce fertile offspring. I'm sorry, I should have added that, fertile offspring. That's important. So that is what basically a species is. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm trying to build up, I'm trying to give you a big picture. So I've started with a very small basic brick, if you like, okay? Now, in terms of the levels of organization, okay, if I ask you to think one step ahead, again, if you're talking about species, of course, humans, they are Homo sapiens, they are a species. Plants, they are different species. You've got other species of insects, you've got other species of animals, and so on, so on, and so forth. Okay. Now, the next idea that we will talk about, again, let me give you a picture. Let's see if you can figure out from the picture idea means. I think I'll have to go back to my O levels folder for this. pictures, ecology. Acha ji, the next thing that I want to talk about is this. अच्छा जी, ये picture मैंने आपके सामने रखी है बच्चों. Tell me, what idea is this picture representing? Yes, so haven't drawn faces. Okay, never mind. G. Nobody? Okay, I've got an answer. Excellent. That's a population. Good, shabash. So this is an example of population. So so it's a population of humans. Many humans I gave the example of humans just to ensure that we understand this. So how do I define population? Okay, so let me give you the technical definition, then we'll talk about this idea further. Population, we say that the total number of individuals of one species, the total number of individuals in one species. Yes, and this is important. That's important. In one species, living in a particular ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? We will talk about that just in a minute. So it's the total number of individuals in one species living in a particular ecosystem at one time. One time is called population. Okay, it's called population. Okay, so again, you can clearly see that how we've transitioned from the idea of species to the idea of population. Okay, so that's the next level, if you like. Now let's go one step further and see what. अच्छा चलें, इसके लिए मैं आपको पिक्चर देता हूँ. पिक्चर पर तो वो लिखा हुआ है. चलें, let's see if you guys can figure out. Pictures. मैं असल में आपको एक trick picture देना चाह रहा हूँ. Let's see if you are able to figure that out. Wait. Okay. I think this should do. Oh, this is not picture. चलिए मैं आपको उसी से दे देता हूँ. छोड़ें. Let's break the ice. Pictures. Okay, so that's the next level, which is, I mean, okay, so हमारा जो next idea है, that is the idea of a community. Okay, now what exactly is a community? As the picture says, it's many populations. Okay, लेकिन of course we need a technical definition. So in this picture, can you tell me how many populations can you see? Option A. So let me pose that as a question. How many populations? Jisad, can you answer this for me?
8.
4? 8. Acha, ठीक है. Rabia, if your mic is working, do you mind if I ask you?
4, sir.
How many populations? 4.
4.
अच्छा ठीक है. Khatija कितनी है? Khatija कितनी है?
5.
अच्छा 5. ये ऐसी कौन सी चीज है जो आपको नजर आ रही है? We can't see. Zainab, what do you think? Okay, Zainab thinks 4. Okay. Faryal, what do you think?
No, sir, I
Okay.
think 5.
4 फरियाद भी समझी 4. अच्छा राबिया, आपने अपना, why did you change your mind? Okay, let's count. The snakes are 1. They look very happy. ये पता नहीं rabbits हैं क्या है बाल. It's animated, I don't know, something like, look like fox. 2, this is 3, these birdies are 4, and guess what? The trees are 5. Okay. Again, this is a very important point. Often students, they tend to ignore the plant population. You have to understand that plant is also a population. Okay, so if I were to define a community now, it would be all the organisms of different species, all the organisms of different species living, and by the way, this is the key word, different species. Okay, different species living in an ecosystem, living in an ecosystem are known as community, are known as community. Okay, ji. So that's the basic idea. Now, if again, so we've transitioned from, as you can see, species to population to eventually the community. Okay. Now, if we go one step further ahead, what again? Let me give you a picture now. Is going to be the following. Okay. और इस पिक्चर पे भी उसने लिखा है, spoils my suspense, but again that serves the purpose. Now this, the fourth level, a level of an ecosystem. Okay, if you look at the diagram, how can you tell that this diagram is representative of the idea of an ecosystem? Okay, so the answer will be, if you look at the picture, let me not first tell you, and if you look at the picture, you will actually understand clearly. The picture shows division for the following. Number 1, you can see living. Number 2, you can see non-living. Okay, like he has labeled the air. You can clearly see the sun, and then you can see the water, and then you can see the soil, and then you can see these rocks. Non-living in rocks, so they can't label here. The ones that I'm shading as yellow, they're the rocks. And then of course you have this lovely rabbit, and I don't know why they've circled the rabbit. So that's basically what an ecosystem would look like. So let's again define what an ecosystem is going to be. So we say, and we need to discuss this up slightly more than the definition. So let me first write down the definition, and then we'll talk about some points that are really important for us to understand when it comes to the ecosystem. So and the ecosystem consists of all organisms living in a defined area. Ecosystem. Multicolored pen आ गया. One second. I think the blue one should do. The purple one should do. Okay. Purple. Okay. So ecosystem consists of all the organisms. Excuse me. All the organisms living in a defined area. Living in a defined area. And by the way, this brings me to another idea, and I'm not going in that detail. क्या कहते हैं defined area को ecosystem में? Come on, tell me. What do you call that thing as? Ecology. Come on, this is O levels. Even not O levels, that's basic general knowledge. You call that thing as a habitat. And you know, habitat is a place where the organism lives. Okay, so ecosystem consists of all of the organisms living in a defined area. That's the habitat, together with their physical environment. Together with their physical environment. Okay, with their physical environment. Yes. So we can say that the living organisms, if you like, they make up the biotic part of the environment. And the biotic is basically has to do with the living, and they live with their physical environment, which we can say is the abiotic environment. Okay, and of course the non-living, and some classical examples of abiotic factors, as you can see, are light, air, etc. Okay, and the rocks in this particular scenario, okay, in this particular picture that you have. ठीक है जी? So that's basically how. So I mean, another way to define ecosystem is it is the biotic and the abiotic environment interacting together. So the interaction is going to be two-way. Biotic will be interacting with biotic, and it will also be interacting with the abiotic. That's another way of, if you like, defining what an ecosystem would look like. Okay. And the study of all of what we have been talking so far about since the lesson has started is known as ecology. So that's the the big picture, if you like. So if I were to summarize, we started off with the idea of species. Species ke baad we saw population. Population ke baad we saw, after population, we saw the idea of community. And then finally, we see the idea of ecosystem. Let me write that here for you. Ecosystem, okay? And of course, the study of this entire thingy is known as ecology, okay? Acha, something we need to talk about ecosystem. Ecosystems ke baare mein thare. I think I should not use the right side of this. PDF mein sahi tarah aata nahi. So something more about the ecosystem. Let me bring an arrow here. So another thing that we need to know is ecosystems, they vary in size and scale. Vary in size and scale. What do I mean by this? Okay. Example. Forest, okay, in terms of size बहुत बड़ा है, ठीक है, लेकिन और इसके अलावा आप अगर को आपके घर का गार्डन है, फॉर एग्जांपल हाउस गार्डन, या आपका जो भी the plot that you have at the back, at your backyard, whatever the case is, जिसको क्यारी कहते हैं, whatever it is, I mean, you can clearly see that there's difference in size, but again, you can consider that as an ecosystem because आपकी घर की जो क्यारी है, for example, the small garden that you have in your house consists of maybe insects that are living there. Maybe you have cats walking around, you have flowers, you have plants, and you have the air, the soil, the water. All of that is the biotic and the abiotic environment interacting together, okay? And the same goes for forest. I think I'm running short on time. Meeting and चलें, आज हमने break नहीं ली, बस ये मैं थोड़ा सा, let me finish this idea, then we'll go for a very small break, 1 minute as usual, and then we will proceed. So that's for size. What about scale? You will be surprised. Let me tell you something. Can you consider yourself to be an ecosystem? As in, yes, you yourself. क्या ख्याल? Sounds absurd, but the answer is yes. किस तरह you are a habitat for so many microorganisms that are actually even required by yourself. So you interact with the air, you interact with the light, and yes, you do interact with these living organisms that live with you. I mean, bacteria, some of the bacteria that are harmful, some of them that have a mutual benefit relationship with humans that are, for example, present in the gut, and so on and so forth, okay? So the point is that a desert bhi ek ecosystem ho sakta hai. A desert can be considered as an ecosystem, and you yourself can also be considered as an ecosystem. Now imagine this, the difference in terms of the size scale, okay? That's basically what I'm trying to explain. And another thing that we need to know about ecosystem is the fact that they vary in complexity. क्या मतलब? देखिए, complexity का मतलब है कि there can be, maybe if you're talking about your garden, for example, maybe you have a single plant species, maybe 2 or 3 of them, maybe 1 or 2 in the species of insects, and the story ends. But if you're talking about the tropical rainforest, for example, You have hundreds, thousands, even some say millions of species that are there. So again, that's what I mean when I say that the ecosystem can be as simple as some very basic organisms, as well as if you look at the other side of the coin, it can have a lot of complexity to that particular idea. Okay. चलें जी, लेट्स ब्रेक फॉर अ 1 मिनट ट्रेडिशनल ब्रेक. आज थोड़ा लंबा खिंच गया, इंशाल्लाह जाएं पानी शानी पी के आएं. पानी नहीं पीना तो खड़ा होकर टांगे स्ट्रेच कर लें. चलें, अगर इतने आप सुस्त हैं मेरी तरह तो एक अंगड़ाई शंगड़ाई ले लें और लेट्स रिज्यूम आफ्टर 1 मिनट इंशाल्लाह.